I'm sorry about that. I had to kick everybody out. I had to go take care of something very quickly. It came on all of a sudden, and it is now taken care of. So I will continue with the course, what we need to talk about. What I've got to do is I want to talk a little bit about uh, the texture and light thing coming up. And since the paper mache thing, you need to do it after you have sanded down your foam sculpture. And it's going to take a little bit of time to dry. So I would like you to read the texture and light thing and get started on that. You can overlap them if you need to, but I don't want you to apply any texture or paint or anything like that to your sculpture until after we have finished this texture and light module. All right. One of the things that we rarely think about as sculptors is the application of color and texture, which we do think a little bit about texture for the sculpture, a lot of visual texture, but we don't really think an awful lot about the application of color. Now, I came across something that I thought was really fascinating. If I can find it really quick, I will share it with you. But a lot of the marble sculptures that we see in museums from the Renaissance, we think that they were always white, and that's not the case. I'm sorry, I'm quiet because I'm typing something and it just occurred to me that I wanted to share this with you. I am going to put in a video. We're going to link a video to one of the I'm just going to share, I think, two videos with you. One is from Smart History, and then one is a really quick one from National Geographic. Both of these show one of the things that happened during the Renaissance. A lot of Italian collectors desperately wanted Roman and Greek sculptures, and so a lot of people were digging them up. They've been knocked over. They've been covered up with dirt. They've been buried, and one of the things that these folks were doing when they would find a marble sculpture for a collector is they thought that the paint on it and stuff like that looked horrible, so they would actually scrape it off and polish everything so it looked white. And so there was paint on them originally, but during the Renaissance, the only access these artists had to the sculptures was after whoever had found them cleaned them up. So they only saw the white marble. Let's see, I'm going to play this really, well, this is National Geographic. I hope it doesn't ding us. Sometimes they do. It can be kind of frustrating, and we'll have to knock that part of it out. Maybe I will just show you. Well, we'll go ahead and try. See if it'll make it into the video, and if it doesn't, just watch it on your own anyway. So I'm going to share this page. Oh, instead of sharing it, I canceled the whole thing out. So let's try again. This sculpture, this is the way that most of the Renaissance artists saw the sculptures, the Greek and Roman sculptures. Very white, very plain. But they were originally painted to be pretty lifelike to whoever was the model. And a lot of that paint wore off over the years, but sometimes the paint stayed on there, and when it was buried and when people found it, they would scrape the paint off and polish it because the painted would deteriorate in an uneven way and didn't look very good. So we can see this is what they look like after they'd been found. But when they were originally made, they were completely painted over. The guy named Emperor Septimus Severus, or Severius Septimus, it depends. He was an emperor in Rome and really helped to define what London is today. And like all Roman emperors, everybody just assumed that he was a white Italian. Well, he wasn't. He was actually born in Libya, and his wife was from Syria. And they found this out because some students were, or some scientists were looking really closely at one of the busts of Severus Septimus, and they discovered that there was pigment in the area over the face. And looking at that pigment, they found out that it was actually dark. It was a very dark brown. And that's when they realized that there was that there was more to this Roman emperor than everybody had expected. And that's when they started realizing that all of the Greek and Roman sculptures, carved marble sculptures, had been painted. Which is something that we don't expect, because as sculptors today, of course, we're still reacting to what was learned during the Renaissance. And a lot of that implies, well, not implies, it really directs us to use natural materials, use materials for what they look like. In the quiz, one of the quizzes, it also talks about what are the two extremes that sculptors work with in materials use. One extreme is making the material look like something completely different than what it is. The other extreme is to make the material look more like what it is. So if you're using wood, in that case, you would polish the wood so that the grain comes out and it pops. And then the other extreme would be painting over the wood and making it look completely different. That's also called trompe l'oeil, or fooling the eye. Fool the eye is another word for it. And so this this next module, we're going to be talking about texture and light, and just looking at different things about paint, visual texture, physical texture, these kinds of things, specifically to, in light of later on, we're going to be revisiting our sculpture and revisiting it with an application of texture and color. You're not going to do that now. All you're doing now is applying the paper mache, sanding it down, applying at least 2 coats. But I want you, as you go through for next week, go through and look at the backgrounds of all background artists. Examine all these artists, see what they do, using texture and light in their sculptures. El-Anat Sui is one of my all-time favorite heroes. I think his work is really amazing. What's incredible with him is he's an expert at doing both of those extremes at the same time, presenting something as it is, more of what it is, and presenting it so that it feels completely different. What he does is take essentially garbage, beer cans, milk lids, things like milk can lids, things like that, and he will shape them, punch holes in them. He has his team do this, and then he links them together with metallic links and makes these huge, they're basically metal sheets that look like gigantic textiles. And it's astounding. I mean, these will cover huge, gigantic walls. They'll be 20 feet across and 15 feet tall with folds in them. And they'll feel like fabric, but you realize that it's not fabric. It is metal garbage, essentially linked with metal wire. It's all metal. It's not foldable, but it feels visually, it has a texture of cloth. I think that's absolutely astounding and amazing. So we'll talk about the assignments next week a little bit more. You're going to do the iris review on those artists that you're presented with. And as you're doing this, think about the different ways that you can apply these things into a 3-dimensional surface. You're not going to apply that yet. I think I will actually go back and seal the assignment so you can't turn it in, but I do want you guys to no, I'm not going to do that. I trust you guys. Don't turn this part of the assignment in yet when you start applying texture and color to your sculpture. I don't think that's even open yet, but I do want you to do the part of the assignment that addresses texture and light. And we'll go over this quiz again next week, but I want you to be aware of these different kinds of things because we're going to be looking at texture and color use with three-dimensional sculpture. I'm sorry, I don't know how to navigate away from that page, so I have to go back a little bit. So we talked a little bit about paper mache. I think we know we're going to look more at the texture and light thing next Wednesday, and that's when I will talk in depth about the texture and color tiles. You'll see that right here they are due July 30th. That's not entirely true, of course. I will change the due date on Wednesday when we talk about them, okay? But I did want to talk a little bit more about using paper mache on your sculpture. The paper mache recipe is essentially you have that Tupperware container, you have a bag of glue and a bag of flour. You're going to put about half the glue in there and about half the flour in there, and then mix it with water. I would recommend wearing the really cheap latex gloves and use your fingers to smush out as much of the lumps as you possibly can. After you mix it, let it set for a bit, and while you're letting it set, that's when you're going to start preparing your paper. And you can use paper towels. That's a really good one. Some people have used cloth. I don't recommend that as your initial layers. If you wanted to come back and use cloth to texture it up, that would be just fine. Newspaper is really good. Magazines, not so much. They don't work as well. I have, however, seen people use pages from old books. That can work too. You just need to let them sit in the paper mache material a little bit longer. When you are doing your paper mache, I would tear a few strips, let them sit in the paper mache mixture that now doesn't have any bubbles in it. And when you go to apply it to your sculpture, you'll pick up one end of your strip and you'll kind of squeegee it off with your fingers. And then you're going to use that and wrap it around your sculpture. I want to go back a little bit and show you the demonstration. Let's see. I do demonstrate this a little bit the last 20 minutes of that video. So I'm demonstrating how to mix the paper mache a little bit. It is kind of gooey, and I was not wearing gloves, so that's why my face looks all screwed up. But the paper mache itself is really easy to work with. The texture is almost like a little bit thinner, well, quite a bit thinner actually than pancake batter, but like barbecue sauce. So you can kind of see it does carry a little bit of shape. It's kind of like thicker gravy. But as you're going to take your strips of paper, I'm mixing it up still and trying to get all the bubbles out. I would recommend watching the whole video because it is just vastly entertaining. And I prattle on about a bit more. I have a pitcher of water there, and I only use one hand to mix with while I'm preparing it. And that's important because if you do need to add more water or any other material, you want to have one hand that's clean. And when you do this, you also want to have paper towels nearby so you can clean up very quickly. I would recommend as well putting a plastic trash bag over your space because that way it's going to be a lot easier to clean up when you're done. So here's I'm cleaning it off with paper towel, my hand that has gross glue on it. Yuck. And then let's see, the newspaper, you're just going to, I'm sorry you can't see it really well. You're going to tear it into about 1/2 inch and 1 inch strips. And the reason is you're going to use narrower strips over the thinner areas of your sculpture, and you're going to use wider strips over wider areas. Some of them might be a little bit longer, some of them might be a little bit shorter. But you can see you can tear pretty evenly shaped strips rather easily with the newspaper. If your paper is tearing funny, there's a good chance it's because the grain is going the wrong way. So you just need to turn your paper right angles, and then you can tear it. Now, I'm doing these about 4 to 6 inches. That gives you the most control, I think. Now here I'm doing some broad areas, so I'm using a little bit thicker paper, and you can see how that's being applied. I have the glue on my fingers, and I'm using that glue to kind of smooth the paper into place. One thing that you'll notice right away is that it will hold itself a lot better if the wet paper mache is touching itself. So on this, I made a mistake because the strip of paper should be long enough to go around that entire area all in one go, so it will attach to itself. So I'm kind of squeegeeing. And this, it's turning out okay, because what I did was I used one short strip, wrapping it partly around on one edge, or one side of it, and then I used another strip wrapping around the other side, so that it is gluing to itself. And you can watch videos on how to do this all over YouTube. It shows it. It is pretty straightforward. But the important thing is, when you do this, you need to make your object smooth. You know, smooth it up, sand it down, and do at least 2 layers of the paper mache. If you need to get more material, and there's a good chance you might, what we used was wood glue, water, and flour. So it's a really simple recipe. I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of what to do. And again, this part is not going to be due for about a week or two, but we can revisit it on Wednesday. If everybody's done, then we'll move the due date up so we can move on to further things. Well, I hope that clarifies things that need to happen. Again, I'm really sorry for stopping everything right in the middle of the lesson tonight. Like I said, I had an emergency that I had to attend to. Everything is resolved. Nobody was hurt. Everything is fine. And what I will do is include both of these recorded videos. I'll upload both of them tonight so that you can watch both of them. They should all be one, but again, I'm sorry, I had to stop and step away really quick. But now I'm back and finishing it up. So if you have any questions for next week, please email me. And I am going through and grading things. I'm sorry I did not get everything done. Where I was at, there was not excellent cell service at all. No internet to speak of. They said, oh yeah, there's internet, it's fine, everything's great, but it was absolutely horrible. So I was not able to finish what I needed to. So I will be working on grading, getting those things taken care of. I noticed that people have already resubmitted some of the things that are graded, and that is terrific. There is no reason that you can't get a perfect score in this class if you just look at the things, look at the comments, and go back and redo those elements so that you can get more points. I hope things are going well for everybody. It sounds like everybody's doing okay. I really appreciate that. There were, if there's hiccups or misunderstandings in the assignments and there's a 0, just follow the directions and resubmit what you need to so you can get more points. Thank you so much for joining me for the class, and I hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful week. And I look forward to visiting with everybody again on next Wednesday.